What's up, guys? What up? We live. Let me fix this camera angle real quick. Yeah, happy Thursday, everybody. Happy Thursday. Gotta make sure that camera angle is right. That's it. What do we say? The week's over? Some people feel like Thursday, the week's over. Some people feel like Friday's the end of the week. Say what's up when you come in the chat. Where is my water? That's really what I mean. Say what's up when you come in the chat. Tell me where you watching from. Hey, let's jump right into this live, y'all. Yeah, I'm pretty sure my wife's gonna make me go to the store like always. Maybe. Alright, chat, where we at with this? Let me turn this off. We don't need that. Yeah, get all the commercials out. Say what's up when you come in, chat. I'm just setting this up so we can react. YouTube, you killing me with these commercials. Like, word? Chat, say what's up. Happy Thursday. It's almost Friday. Man, I don't want to go to work tomorrow, but I'm going, so, you know, I'm just complaining. Yeah, I was watching this White House. Well, I watched a couple of them live, where the the White House press secretary is talking. I'm like, yo, she's cutthroat. Caroline Levitt, I think her last name. I don't know how to say her last name, but I don't want to butcher it. And this video by Senator Kennedy, I'm telling you, I'm not saying it's worse like in a bad way, but it's the worst one just because if you watch Senate hearings, like, bro, you already know Senator Kennedy, like, he always do a lot in Senate hearings. Like, anytime, and I dread them, but I'm not gonna lie, I laugh a lot about it. But, like, this thing with, like, the school and, like, these types of books that they were letting kids read in school. Like, I'm listening to Senator Kennedy, like, talk about this book. And then I'm like, dude, this sounds like gay porn. Like, what is he reading? And I found out that it's, like, 2 books that they want to have in, like, school for the kids. I knew about one of them, but I'm just like, okay. There's no way I'd be okay with my son bringing that book home. It just, even if it is about trauma and abuse, what you guys are going to hear them say in a moment here. I told my wife, I'm like, I still don't think I would be okay with my son's bringing that home. So yeah, Senator Kennedy just. We're not gonna listen to the whole thing. I'm gonna tell you guys that right now because it's provocative. And he felt the need to read it twice. So we're not gonna listen to the whole thing. But it definitely sounds like he's reading gay porn. I don't like, but this is just what Senator Kennedy does. He does it during all his Senate hearings. If you guys are familiar with Senator Kennedy, this is like kind of normal for him. Sorry guys, when I get off work, the first thing I do is put sweatpants on because I hate work clothes. I don't know about you guys. That's Cash Patel, we did that already. Okay, so stream's a little later than usual. Sorry about that, guys. I had a pretty hectic day today. But with that being said, we got 3 things that we're going to react to today. Then we're going to have a clip from Cliff after that. That's how we usually end the live stream. So with that being said, 3 clips. One is from the White House during the press secretary. She was talking to the press about just some Doge findings, some things that President Trump is talking about with Gaza, with Israel, and how he is trying to be a peacemaker in this administration. This is what he's deeming to be. Also, we're going to go over Senator Kennedy. It's funny because he's talking to this panel about these 2 books. And the books really are in children's schools, but they're not. They come off like pornographic books, if I'm honest. They kind of do. And it's not, like, I don't think they're explicit to where they have pictures, but just listening to him read, it just, I don't think I would be comfortable with that book being in my children's school. And then to sit down with Stephen A. Smith. He actually got a chance to sit down with Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader, so the House leader. So I was excited to listen to that. But then I very quickly was not excited because he didn't answer any of the questions that Stephen A. Smith asked him. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the live stream. Welcome to Cozy Corner TV. I am your host, Kieran Smith. Call me Q in the chat, y'all. Say what's up. And we are on the corner, ladies and gentlemen. So, first up on the menu, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. She is a savage, right? Like we're all pretty much aware of that. I don't think it matters whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. I'm like, she's a pretty savage press secretary. I mean, she's sharp. You know, she handles herself well in front of the press. And she really is no nonsense. It's very obvious she's a supporter of Trump, right? This is obvious. But there were some questions that were asked. This is less than 24 hours ago. So a couple of hours ago, she's in the White House. Almost a day ago now, but not yet. And she's being asked some questions about EOs, executive orders. What does the Olympics look like? You know, would there be trans women in the Olympics? Asking about Gaza and what does this look like for President Trump to strike a deal with them to where the United States owns that territory? And also some Doge findings. That some she listed off I was familiar with, others I was just like, dude, you gotta be kidding me. I don't know how far this is gonna go, guys, because I say it in plenty of lives. I don't care about voting for a Democrat if it's a good president, right? If it's a good Democrat, I don't care. If it's a good Republican, I don't care. But I'm troubled because if Doge keeps finding certain things, I'm like, the Democrats, they're never gonna get back in office. They're not going to ever get back in office because they're just going to seem like a crooked party. Like, it doesn't even matter at this point, even if they put someone up good, which I would like to see. I think anyone would like to see. I mean, even at some point in time, our vice president wasn't the biggest supporter of President Donald Trump, right? So I think even if J.D. Vance saw a decent Democrat, he wouldn't mind. But I'm just like, where is the decent ones at? Like... Just going off this last administration and everything they're finding years back, I'm troubled. Like I'm concerned about the Democratic Party. Hakeem Jeffries, he's going to talk a little bit about it, about how it might be a swing. But again, I think his answer is very tone deaf to what Stephen actually asked him. I think he thinks that there's going to be a swing in 2028 more towards the Democratic Party, and I think that he's very tone deaf when he thinks like that. So let's jump right in and let's see what Carol is talking about. This is like a 16-minute clip, guys. We're not going to react to this whole clip. I'm probably only going to go, I think I went about 8.5 minutes in. And then you guys can go check it out. It's on, where did I cover this? Open for Tar Fleury. So he has 22.1K subscribers. Bro, if I butchered your name, which I probably did because I was sitting here like an hour ago, like, how do you say this name? And I'm really not going to ask Google. And Google couldn't even say it right. I probably got it closer than Google. But shout out to you, bro. Shout out to you for this commentary and for this video. So let's go ahead and get into this, guys.
And one more thing before I wrap up, because I do want to get to these meetings and I will see you all at the EO signing later this afternoon. I would just say that you brought to mind California and North Carolina, who continue to be on our hearts, and the president and this administration are committed to ensuring that these individuals get the funding that they need. And I would just say a strong message to Democrats who are out there pretending to be outraged about the long list of crap that this administration is cutting, federal waste and funding, like $2 million for sex changes in Guatemala, $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt, $20 million on a new Sesame Street show in Iraq, $4.5 million to combat disinformation in Kazakhstan. I could go on, and I'm happy to provide this list to every single one of you.
It's like, like she has a whole list there, and there was somewhere else. I'm gonna see if I can find it for tomorrow for you guys for Friday's stream. I want to see if I can find this video where she's either going down a longer list of findings, or it's not Elon, but it's someone else I saw. And you know, Bill O'Reilly covered it, and I did cover some of that. His list was actually about her size or a little bit shorter. But there are two things that are just grotesquely offensive to me, if I'm honest. $20 million for sex changes in Guatemala. You know, one thing you guys are going to learn about me on this channel is that I do, like, so I public speak often, right? If it's not at a church and I get the privilege to do a sermon for one of my pastor friends, or if it's not at some sort of chapter where they ask me to speak about prior military experience or whatever, something. I do public speak often. So I'm very comfortable with taking really long pauses. And they don't make me uncomfortable, but they make my audience uncomfortable, and I'm really good at it. Like, my wife tells me that. So if you guys like see me like talking and then I just pause for a minute, it's just because I'm getting my bearings, and I'm doing my best not to say something that I'll either regret, I don't really mean, or it's just not who I truly am. But $20 million nonetheless on sex changes in Guatemala. So $20 million on sex changes in America is ridiculous. Like, I don't really know whose idea it was to send it to Guatemala. I'm pretty sure it was the last administration. Trump's administration just hasn't been in there long enough. But I just doubt it. I just know it was Kamala and Joe, and I don't know why they did this. Like, I don't understand like why they did this. But other than that one, the $20 million for a Sesame Street show in Iraq. What exactly is the point of that? Like, I literally had, because I've known about that piece of information since I did a live probably 2 weeks ago now, where I covered some things Bill O'Reilly was talking about. And yeah, that was a bullet point on his presentation. $20 million for a Sesame Street show in Iraq. Wow, I'm literally trying to figure out, like, what did the logistics of that look like? Like, what did this conversation even entail? That this was suitable. Like, why is it 20 million? Why wasn't it like? Why couldn't it have been 25,000? Like, why did it even get past 100,000? I'm so confused.
Democrats are outraged that the American people want to be, they want their taxpayers going to good uses, not stuff like this. But then they're very quiet about the fact that there are still North Carolinians and people in California who have lost everything, and in the last 4 years, this federal government did nothing to help them. This president will continue to put Americans first, and I think the successes of this week so far speak to that, and it's only Wednesday. Garrett, great to see you here today.
Thank you. On Gaza, the president has spent basically his entire public career criticizing foreign entanglements, nation building, sending American troops to fight abroad, particularly in the Middle East. This plan seems like it could ultimately involve all of those things. Can you explain this reversal and how building and owning Gaza squares with America First foreign policy?
I would reject the premise of your question that this forces the United States to be entangled in conflicts abroad. The president has not committed to putting boots on the ground in Gaza. He has.
I think that was a good clarification she made, where she said, I'm going to reject that, where, you say it forces the Americans to be entangled. And I think part of that is just President Trump's negotiation strategy. Like, he likes to negotiate, he likes to make a lot of deals. That's no secret about our president, right? So I think that has a lot to do with what she's saying. But I do like that she clarifies that, because he asked the question very casually and she's like, I just want to reject that idea. Like, the American people or America is not forced to be entangled with anyone. It's just part of President Trump's negotiation strategy.
It's also said that the United States is not going to pay for the rebuilding of Gaza. His administration is going to work with our partners in the region to reconstruct this region. Let me just take a step back here, because this is an out-of-the-box idea. That's who President Trump is. That's why the American people elected him. And his goal is lasting peace in the Middle East for all people in the region. And as I said in my opening remarks, we've had the same people pushing the same solutions to this problem for decades. And it's been made very clear to the president that the United States needs to be involved in this rebuilding effort to ensure stability in the region for all people. But that does not mean boots on the ground in Gaza. It does not mean American taxpayers will be funding this effort. It means Donald Trump, who is the best deal maker on the planet, is going to strike a deal with our partners in the region.
So Donald Trump's trying to strike a deal in the region. She's clarifying this for the reporters, that President Trump, is interested in America owning Gaza, but she's making it clear that this doesn't mean that the American taxpayer dollars are going to go towards the rebuilding of Gaza, and it doesn't mean that there are going to be boots on the ground in Gaza. So she just clarified that for the reporters, because they're kind of putting it out there like, America's going to pay for this, or there might be a war on the ground, and she's just clarifying that those things are not going to happen.
Rule out American troops in Gaza last night. Are you doing that now?
I am saying that the president has not committed to that just yet. He has not made that commitment, and you know that.
And on the foreign partners, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Saudis have already panned this plan. What foreign partners, if any, have expressed any interest in being part of it?
Well, the president has said he's been socialing this idea for quite some time. He's been thinking about this. He said in his remarks last night, this was not a decision or an announcement that he takes lightly. And the president has already spoken to the President al-Sisi. In fact, that was his first foreign leader call. He is meeting with the King of Jordan, King Abdullah, next week. He spoke with the King of Bahrain. He spoke with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. And he has made it very clear, he's been very vocal, that he expects our partners in the region, particularly Egypt and Jordan, to accept Palestinian refugees temporarily so that we can rebuild their home. I'd like to...
So President Trump is talking to these people because he's trying to strike a deal with them, Caroline is saying, not to necessarily displace the Palestinians, but to have them relocated somewhere else so America can rebuild their home. You have some people who feel they're very torn about this. You can say it's pretty controversial, right? There's even going to be a reporter that's going to ask, America wants to, strike a deal so they can possibly own Gaza and go in there and rebuild it. But what does it look like for the Palestinians who are saying we don't want to leave Gaza, that this is our home? And, she asked the question, like she follows up with, does this mean that America would be willing to go in there with force and remove them? And, Caroline, she very quickly, deters it. Not deters it, but she very quickly deflects. She doesn't deflect. She there's a word that I'm looking for, but my mind is like, I'm so tired right now. But she takes her question and she what she said to the last gentleman, she says that I don't agree with what you're saying. She's like, I'm going to put it into a better context. So that's what she does for that lady. She says, no, it's not that President Trump is willing to put boots on the ground, but he does want to get the people out of Palestine moved so he can rebuild. I think part of the reason why this has my mind so flustered and my mind is racing about this is because I still haven't looked into a lot of what with certain people who I know are in big support of Jewish people, and they have huge platforms, what they have said about this, and I'm torn about it. Like, I'm interested in knowing what. I'm not gonna lie, like what Ben Shapiro's saying about it. Like, there are some people who I'm pretty interested in to see like what they're talking about. Piers Morgan. So I haven't really looked at all of those people just yet, and I do pay attention to some of the things they react to. When it comes to anti-Semitism, Ben Shapiro usually does an excellent job on covering, where that's happening at, where it might not be so obvious at, and it's kind of like behind the scenes. He does a great job at that. So that's part of the reason why, like, my mind's a little bit flustered when it comes to this, because I just don't know. Like, it's such a controversial issue in the sense where it's like, you have so many Americans, right? And I think I understand a little bit more why now it's frustrating for me, especially Christian Americans, right? That are in support of Israel, like real huge support. So, and a lot of it is biblically based. I will say that as far as Christianity in America when it comes to Israel. So that's why I'm just like, I'm flustered by this, because I don't know how many people actually are taking to this, like how many people actually feel okay with this. Most of the time, America is in huge support of Israel, and a lot of that does come from, America being founded on biblical principles. Now, I didn't say America was perfect, but this is what we know, right? So when it comes to things like that, President Trump is in office and he wants to be a peacemaker, so I get it. He wants to rebuild the city so all people can go there and be there, right? So everyone can live there. Like, he just wants peace, and he wants to do this so it basically creates ongoing peace, and like the Middle Eastern regions can't be terrorized by ISIS as much as they have been in the past decades, and so on and so forth. So I get, like, all of that makes sense to me. It's just that historically you see America very strongly on the side of Israel. I'm not saying that means Gaza has to be ruled out. I'm just curious as to, like, what does this look like for, like, a lot of Jews in America when they see President Trump, making this type of decision. I don't think that they, would not like him for it, but I just wonder, because there is no secret that a lot of the Palestinians in Gaza, they're not interested in coexisting. Like, we just know that they're not. that hasn't been a secret. So to me, it's just interesting to hear that, that part, like, President Trump is trying to strike a deal, so America can own Gaza, and I'm just like, what does that look like? How does that make Israel feel? How does it make Christians in America feel? I don't know. So I'm going to look a little bit more into that in the next coming days. You'll probably hear me talk more about that specifically, like President Trump deal with Gaza and trying to see if America can own it Friday and Saturday. But I want to look into that a little bit more before I tell you guys any type of way that I might personally feel about it, which is not a huge way. But I just think it's interesting that historically America has been on Israel's side. And I'm not saying President Trump wanting to rebuild Gaza means that America's not. I just wonder if it looks like a betrayal to anybody, to Israel, to Jewish people, so I'm going to see what's out there in the next couple of days.
Show you some images of Gaza that were taken. Fox News aired this. That is, as they put it, in an apocalyptic scene in Gaza. This is an uninhabitable place for human beings. Do you really think that families can live their dream in a region that looks like this, with no running water, no electricity? And the special envoy to the president, Steve Witkoff, recently traveled to Gaza, as you all know. And he came back with images that he showed the president of the dire situation here. And the president made this decision with a huge...
You see this subtitle right here? This is probably why I was even a little bit flustered in explaining it. Apocalyptic scenes in Gaza as Israel bombs terror targets. It's just, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. I don't know. It's almost like it's giving Israel as a terrorist, right? Like, I feel, like, that's what I kind of feel like. But I could just be, maybe that's an abrupt assumption. So that's why I said I'm going to take Friday and Saturday, and we're going to see what I see out there, I doubt any mainstream media is gonna really cover this. But I'll look a little bit. Super curious to see like what Ben Shapiro's saying about it. There was something he actually did a couple of days ago, and I was about to watch it before I jumped on live, but I just didn't have a chance to. Not that I was gonna react to it today, but I just wanted to see what he was saying because it seems like you know, his title as President Trump doesn't seem to agree with, I think it's like a two-state notion or something like that. I don't even have it up right now. So you guys will probably hear me talk about it tomorrow or Saturday, but we're going to look more into it for that reason. But just this sub-headline here, it bothers me. Like, apocalyptic scenes in Gaza as Israel bombs terror targets. It's just giving Israel as a terrorist.
Humanitarian heart for all people in the region. Peter.
Thank you, Caroline. Are any officials here preparing to fight Democratic lawmakers in the streets?
Absolutely not.
So
And thanks for the question.
some elected Democrats are so steamed about Doge. Congresswoman LaMonica McIver says we are at war. Ilhan Omar says we might actually see somebody get killed. And Chris Van Hollen says we have to fight this in the Congress, we have to fight this in the streets. So what now?
And may I just point out, if you heard that type of violent, enticing rhetoric from our side of the aisle, from Republican leaders on Capitol Hill, I think there would be a lot more outrage in this room today. It's unacceptable, the comments that have been made by these Democrat leaders, and frankly, they don't even know what they're talking about. Because President Trump was elected with a mandate from the American people to make this government more efficient. He campaigned across this country with Elon Musk, vowing that Elon was going to head up the Department of Government Efficiency, and the two of them, with a great team around them, were going to look at the receipts of this federal government and ensure it's accountable to American taxpayers. That's all that is happening here, and for Democrat officials to incite violence and encourage Americans to take to the streets is incredibly alarming, and they should be held accountable for that rhetoric.
It sounds like something that they're most concerned about is Doge engineers with access to Treasury systems. Can you clarify, do the Doge engineers have read-only access
Yes.
in these systems? So they are not allowed to write new code?
No.
They are not, okay.
No.
And
So I'm sure that made a lot of the leftists excited, right? I just wonder what that does for their argument, because most of the time when they're outside and they're in their Senate hearings, this is the stuff that they're bringing up. Like, oh, they have access to everything, and they're going to revamp everything, and they're rewriting code, and they're doing this. And the White House press secretary just clarified that. She said no. So the reporter asked, does Doge have read-only access, or are they like allowed to like write code? Does their access, is it more in depth than that? And she says no. Like, so they pretty much only have read-only access based off what the White House press secretary is telling us right now.
And then one more thing. NBC is reporting that some of the illegal immigrants that we've seen rounded up and arrested are not being deported. They're being released with ankle or wrist monitoring devices, or they have to check in on the phone. So is the administration arresting more people than you have room for?
I have seen the reports, and I'm glad you brought it up because we want to address it. There have been a total of 461 illegal aliens. This is of this morning when I got this information from DHS. That have been released from custody. Of the more than 8,000 that have been arrested since President Trump was inaugurated, it's less than 6%. And there are reasons for their release. Some of the factors include a lack of significant likelihood of removal in the foreseeable future, lack of detention availability, which is something this president and this administration has been incredibly vocal about. We are doing everything we can to deport and detain illegal immigrants, but we need Congress's help to increase funding for Border Patrol and for ICE to increase detention capability in our facilities. And then other serious medical conditions have also been the reasons for some of the release of these individuals. But none of them have final deportation orders. Many of them are probably contesting their immigration status. I refer you to DHS for more details, but I did get that information because I knew it would be a question, so thank you. Sure. Yes.
The president and you here again today they're given the devastation. You think Palestinians have no choice but to leave Gaza and go elsewhere. But Palestinians say this is their home. They don't want to go. The president last night said he's willing to use the military if necessary. Is the U.S. prepared to remove Palestinians from Gaza by force?
The president is prepared to rebuild Gaza for Palestinians and all people in the region, peace-loving people who want real economic development and opportunity in the region. This is a region that has been controlled by Iranian-backed terrorists, Hamas, who have brutalized not just Israelis but Palestinians too. It is because of Hamas that you see those images on that screen, that Gaza has become a demolition site because Hamas launched that brutal attack on Israel on October the 7th. And so again, I would stress, President Trump wants to ensure that this can be a place where all people can live in peace. He is a peacemaker in chief. He made that very clear in his first term. And as for how that will be accomplished, the president and his team are talking with our allies in the region to consider next steps.
So should the American people be prepared to see U.S. military on the ground fighting a ground war against Hamas?
Again, the president has not committed to U.S. troops in the region.
But it is an option.
I have said that the president has not committed to that yet. Sure.
Can you just follow up on that though? Why
So
not?
the reporter tries to press her and says, but it is an option. And Caroline's like, I've already said that the president has not, and that's what I knew President Trump picked her for a reason. This wasn't unfamiliar to me because if we remember his first term, this is how President Trump kind of hired within the White House, right? Like he's a very big supporter of women working, right? And he hasn't been quiet about that. So I just think he did a decent pick because, a lot of people would say, oh, a woman in that position, like, is she really going to be able to handle the press? And that's why I said she handles herself well.
Rule out the idea of committing U.S. troops. This has been a long-standing argument that the president has made really over the last decade or so, talking about endless wars and not something U.S. troops. Why not rule out?
Because I think the president is very good when he's making deals and negotiating, not to rule out anything because he wants to preserve that leverage in negotiations. And so I think that's what he's doing here.
If I can
Mary.
follow up on that, though, he also said that everyone loves this plan. He said that in the Oval Office this morning.
Sure.
In fact, the Deputy Prime Minister of Jordan called it a declaration of war on the Arab people. So how does he square the fact that even some Republicans on the Hill are objecting to this or questioning this? How does he square the fact saying everyone loves this
Well,
plan?
King Abdullah of Jordan will be here next week, so I can provide you more context on the conversations he will have directly with the President of the United States after that meeting. And I would just point out that there's been a lot of leaders and officials all around the world who have doubted, I suppose, the deal-making ability of President Trump. You heard the Panama leader saying that he would not agree to some of the concessions that he has now made because of Secretary Rubio's visit. You have the Colombian president saying he wouldn't accept flights of Colombian illegal nationals who have entered into our country illegally, and those flights are underway. So actions speak louder than words.
Yeah, and this is why I said that President Trump made a good pick because Caroline Leavitt she's a big supporter of Trump, and I think that it's a big thing that if you're going to pick a White House press secretary, that you guys seem in unison, and I can say that we haven't always seen that in every single administration, so it's kind of refreshing to see it here. She doesn't let the reporters lie on the administration. She doesn't allow them to say false things or push false narratives about President Trump. If someone speaks up about something that isn't true, she will quickly intercede and say, let me interject there and actually, clarify what's going on here. So I think that she does a good job doing this. There were some questions. There was one question someone asked about the Olympics. Let me see if it comes
Tasha.
up.
Caroline, you said the president has been working on this idea for a while behind the scenes now. Is there a written plan based on the president's proposal for Gaza? And if so, when was it?
Question, and the president has actually mentioned this, that he does expect the Olympic Committee and for Olympics in Los Angeles. Questions for you on the news of the day.
All right, so I wanted to get to that question because this is the last part of this we're going to react to. So someone's asking a question about the Olympics and what does it look like for the 2028 Olympics, because I believe it's going to be held in Los Angeles. And the way the reporter phrased it was hilarious. So this is how you can tell when you're in good conservative company, because the way that the reporter phrased it, she said, well, what if there's a man who thinks he's a trans woman or thinks he's a woman, is he going to be allowed to perform in the Olympics, right? And I just say that because clearly if you're in a room full of liberals, they're all going to be like, oh my gosh, you have to say the right thing, but in a room full of conservatives, probably not so much.
includes Steve Witkoff as well. Mary.
Two questions for you on the news of the day. So how is today's executive order going to impact the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles? For example, would a man who thinks that he's a transgender woman be allowed to compete as a female on U.S. soil?
It's a very good question, and the president has actually mentioned this, that he does expect the Olympic Committee and the NCAA to no longer allow men to compete in women's sports. And I think the president, with the signing of his pen, starts a very public pressure campaign on these organizations to do the right thing for women and for girls across the country. Again, this is an incredibly popular position. There have been many notable female athletes who have had the courage to speak out against some very powerful institutions in this country. They deserve to have a voice and a say. The president is bringing their voice to the highest level at the White House this afternoon, and he expects these organizations to comply with this federal executive order that he'll be signing today.
Thank you. And one more, on media coverage of this executive order and the topic in general, what's the White House's view of framing that calls men transgender females or similar rhetoric coming from organizations like the ACLU and GLAAD?
Have you heard about this brand new product that instantly cleans oven grease and mold without any scrubbing? Take any.
Well,
Okay, so the reporter asked, what is the White House stance on some of these organizations like GLAAD that's still saying things like, you know, trans women or men who now identify as women and using the right pronoun. She's asking, what's the White House's stance on organizations that are still doing that, even though Donald Trump has said that this administration only recognizes two different genders.
it's been very clear. The policy of this administration is that there are only two sexes, male and female. Pretty simple. Brian Glenn.
Yeah, so that's how she answers it, you know. So I thought she did a great job at answering the questions, you know, for the people. She knows that the people are watching that, so I think that that's why she does her best to actually answer as transparently as she can. The press has always been annoying to Trump's administration. That's no secret, right? The first administration and this administration, we would watch President Trump go at it with the press all of the time. So we're going to jump over to Senator Kennedy, where he is reading. He's reading this book that apparently, well, there's two books. I know one is called All Boys Aren't Blue. I'm not sure of the other one, but he proceeds to read a couple of passages out of this book, and it is explicit. Like, I'm not going to lie to you guys, it's explicit, kind of like hide your kids, hide your wife, kind of explicit. Because some of the things that he's just saying. Now, there is a panel of, I believe, 5 individuals there that are fighting for the right for the book to stay in the school, and also the fact that censorship is wrong and the government shouldn't be allowed to do it. And Kennedy kind of proceeds with, okay, censorship is wrong, but what's the solution here? Like, what are you guys asking us to do? I'm only going to play the first, I think, minute and 24 seconds of it. Then I'm going to fast forward to the point where Senator Kennedy starts asking the question, because he's going to read the story more than once, or he's going to read a certain part more than once, and it's already a lot to listen to the first time, so I'm just going to go past it after he says it the first time.
I put some lube on and got him on his knees, and I began to slide into him from behind. I pulled out of him and kissed him while he masturbated. He asked me to turn over while he slipped a condom on himself. This was my ass, and I was struggling to imagine someone inside me.
So this is like, we're only like a little bit halfway in there, and it's already too much. But this is, like, when I heard him reading this, because I've known about this for some time now, it's not the first time I've heard about the book, I remember saying to myself, like, this is a children's book? Like, so the panel's going to explain more, but either way, just what he's saying so far, I'm like, I wouldn't be okay with my children reading that book.
He got on top and slowly inserted himself into me. It was the worst pain I think I have ever felt in my life. Eventually, I felt a mix of pleasure with the pain. Close quote. All boys aren't blue. I got a new strap-on harness today. I can't wait to put it on you. It will fit my favorite dildo perfectly. You're going to look so hot. I can't wait to have your cock in my mouth. I'm going to give you the blowjob of your life, then I want you inside of me. End quote.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I confess I'm a little confused, and I appreciate the argument or discussion that we've been having, but for me, it's a little too conceptual or, I don't know, metaphysical or theological or whatever you want to call it. I want to try to understand what you're asking us to do. Let's take two books that have been much discussed. The first one is called All Boys Aren't Blue. And I will quote from it. I put some lube on and got him on his knees. My life, eventually I felt a mix of pleasure with the pain. Close quote.
Yeah, so I
All
fast
boys aren't
forwarded
blue.
that part, guys.
The second is another much discussed book. I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's called Genderqueer. Let me read an excerpt from that. Quote, I got a new strap-on harness today. I out of me. End quote. Now, Mr. Secretary, what are you asking us to do? Are you suggesting that only librarians should decide whether the two books that I just referenced should be available to kids? Is that what you're saying?
So he is saying, he's asking that first question, but he is also asking a deeper question than that. So there's a second one. He hasn't gotten to it yet, but the reason why I'm gonna do a little bit of a spoiler alert is because we're not reacting to the whole entire video. So he's basically saying to him here, what are you guys asking us to do here today? Are you saying only the librarian can decide if these children can read the books? Meaning that the parents can't protest or argue against it. And the reason why I'm pretty familiar with this is because in my Bible study at my secular job, we've had a Bible study that's been going on there for a couple of years now. A gentleman in there actually talked about it because there were some books in his son's school that he was concerned about. I guess his son, if he didn't bring one home, maybe he told his dad about it. And my friend was very concerned. You know, he was very concerned about the books that his sons were talking about. And he actually ended up meeting with the principal. So you will eventually hear these panelists talk about, you know, we don't want random parents to have the right to be able to protest books and then children don't get the access to them. Well, by random parents, there's a good chance he's probably talking about either a Christian parent or a parent that just wouldn't want their child reading a book that's that explicit. Now, you will hear one of the panelists say that All Boys Aren't Blue isn't about pornography, it's about sexual abuse. So you will hear one of the panelists say that. But the way the book reads, like if you're just listening to the way Senator Kennedy was like reading it off, I'm like, I don't like it. You know what I mean? It almost sounds like somebody's reciting a fantasy. Now, I'm not saying that the book should be reading like someone screaming or yelling, but maybe that part doesn't need to be in there. Like I get that it's about sexual abuse, but there's other ways that children can learn about sexual abuse other than reading, I think material that's that explicit. I don't understand why it has to be so descriptive, you know, like with it's a bit descriptive, I feel like. Now, if somebody were to ask me, do I feel the same way about the book being in a library of high schoolers, like maybe someone in 12th grade is reading it? Not so much. I'm going to be honest, not so much as if like a third grader has access to it or like somebody who's like 12 has access to it. But nonetheless, in 12th grade, your brain isn't fully developed either. So I don't think I would be okay with my 12th grader reading that book either. It's just way too explicit and descriptive for my liking.
No.
Okay. Tell me what you're saying.
First of all, there's this.
Don't give me a speech. Tell me what you're asking me to do.
With all due respect, Senator, and the words you spoke are disturbing, especially coming out of your mouth is very disturbing. But I would also tell you that we're not advocating for kids to read porn, to Senator Booker's
What
point.
are you advocating for?
We are advocating for parents, random parents, not to have the ability, under the guise of keeping kids safe, to try and challenge the world view of every single manner on these issues.
You're getting conceptual again.
I'm not getting conceptual.
Well,
I'm saying
yes,
that-
you are. Yes, you are. Because I want to know what you're recommending. It sounds to me like what some of you are saying, the librarians should decide who gets to see that book.
I'm saying when individual parents are allowed to make a decision of where that line is, and To Kill a Mockingbird, which involves a rape scene, should that book be pulled from our libraries? I think it becomes a slippery
Well,
slope.
I think you ought to think about it a little bit more before you come here.
I've thought about
If you're going to propose something, you ought to be able, in 30 seconds, to be able to explain what you're asking us to do.
Senator-
Ms. Kelly, what do you understand? Well, let me skip you for a second. Mr. Cameron, tell me what you're proposing.
It's pronounced mix.
Mix, is that how would you like me to refer to you?
Senator, your definition of sexual is synonymous with LGBTQ identity.
I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you to tell me you read those two excerpts. Do you
Genderqueer.
think that, are you asking that only librarians and not parents have any say in whether minors can read those books?
That's Kennedy's main thing. He wants to know, are you saying that only librarians have say in what these kids can read and that their parents have absolutely no say? That's what Kennedy is really trying to get at. He wants them to answer him. He wants somebody to say, yes, Senator, we believe that this decision belongs to the librarians. So then, of course, the Senate shoots it down if that's what happens. But that is what Senator Kennedy is getting at, because eventually what's happening here is the last gentleman. He is the I think he's the secretary of what is his name? Hold on, chat. Give me a minute. Yeah, Alexei. He's the Secretary of State of Illinois. He is the one who is saying that their main goal is to not have random parents be able to say, hey, I don't like these kind of books in the library and my children have access to them and I think that they shouldn't be there. Senator Kennedy is trying to get at saying, so are you saying that only the librarians can make the decision that parents have nothing to do about it? The Secretary of the State of Illinois is saying, I don't want random parents to be able to have something to do. Meaning like parents like my friend, right? That basically just went and met with the principal and feels like things like that shouldn't be in school. What does this have to do with the child's curriculum or them learning? Even if it is about sexual abuse and not about homosexuality or pornography, what does it have to do with my child's curriculum? I think a parent has the right to ask that question. I really do. I understand the Secretary of State of Illinois. I get what he's saying, because he's like, basically, to his defense, if I will, it's not fair that a random parent could just come in here and say, hey, I don't like a book, or because of their religious affiliation, hey, I don't think my child should be predisposed to this book or have access to this book, so take it out of your schools, right? That's basically what he doesn't want to be allowed to happen, that someone could just do that and that course of action actually happens. But to Senator Kennedy's defense, he's making a good point. He's saying, if you know what you're coming in here to fight for, you should be able to tell me in 30 seconds what you're asking me to do. So he's asking him, what are you asking us to do? And that's why he starts to ask the question, are you saying that only librarians can make the decision on who reads this book, meaning that the parents have no decision to make. Or no
Is
say
that
in
what
it.
you're saying?
Genderqueer has never been in my school library, so it's never been
Well,
banned.
suppose it was. Should it be up just to the librarian, or should parents have a say?
There should be facilitation of collaboration between
Should
students
parents
and
have a say?
educators. Parents should be working with students and educators to be
Okay.
making decisions because students are.
And who decides ultimately? The librarian, or do you take a vote, or who takes the vote?
Book review committees in the community in my school district.
You want a committee to decide?
There are committees.
Okay. Well, I'm asking you, how do we decide whether the two books that I just referenced should be available in the library? What,
You know, and this is no disrespect to like Senator Kennedy, because I actually like him. I think he's he's pretty humorable, at least to me. But this interaction between the two of them, as I watched it, you know, it really looks like a frustrated grandfather talking to his grandson, right? Who's also a little bit frustrated, and I think that's okay, right, to a certain degree. But I think Senator Kennedy, like, he's not even really letting him speak, and I get why. It's because he's like, listen, I don't want a speech, or I don't want a story. You know, he's used to a lot of that when it comes from the left or from the Democrats. So he tends to jump right away to like, I don't want to hear a story. But still, nonetheless, like he really seems like he's frustrated with him, and he just wants him to answer the question. But he also wants to explain to him like what certain things are. I think the younger guy can tell that Senator Kennedy might not understand certain things, so he wants to explain it to him. You know who I think would have did well here? He's done his time here. He's already our VP now. But JD, like somebody like JD would have done well sitting there talking to this person about this, because, you know, I think JD would have been able to be a little bit less hot-headed, maybe not get so frustrated so fast. I can understand Senator Kennedy's frustration. He's from a different generation. He's older, and he's also like, this crap just doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't want to hear about this woke crap. Like, answer my question, you know. But I just noticed that during this exchange.
what would you, if you were running things, what would you do?
That's why your nerves fail and your feet start burning. Did you know that neuropathy is a completely reversible condition?
All Boys Aren't Blue, the scene you mentioned, is about sexual abuse.
I know what it's about.
It's not
What would
erotic.
you do in terms of making the books available?
So he says that the scene that you read about Boys in Blue, it's about sexual abuse. It's not neurotic. And Senator Kennedy says, I know what it's about. Okay. But I don't think he actually does know what it's about. And if he does, I don't think he accepts it. Because he's gonna go on to say, we're not talking about Catcher in the Rye here, right? Like in Catcher in the Rye, it also has some things that have happened in it, and that Holden alludes to, and the book alludes to, that could be homophobic and, you know, teen exploring sexuality. So I guess he feels like Catcher in the Rye is much more suitable than Boys in Blue, which based on what he read, I would say he's right. Because Catcher in the Rye, I read it in high school, it was not that explicit as what Senator Kennedy read. But that is an important point that the younger gentleman is making. He's saying that the scene that you read, it's about sexual abuse. It's actually not erotic, right? But it kind of gets overshadowed by Senator Kennedy, because he's really just, you can tell he's frustrated about the fact that they could even be considering keeping this in the school, putting it in the school, and on top of that, parents have no say-so in anything.
Did you say anybody can see them, or they have to be in a special session?
Students who do not read books, like All Boys Aren't Blue, cannot learn what is appropriate.
I understand that.
They cannot learn.
I understand, but none
about
of you want to
abuse.
answer my question. You come here and you say censorship is bad, and of course it's bad. But the obvious response is, okay, you heard the books we're talking about. Okay, we're not talking about Catcher in the Rye. So tell me what you want, who gets to decide. And all I've heard is the librarians. And parents have nothing to do with it. And if that's your response, what planet did you just parachute in from?
Parents, Senator.
Or what country, more appropriately? This is not China.
Parents, Senator, with all due respect, parents absolutely have a say My parents were immigrants, came in this country. We never checked out books without our parents seeing what books we were reading. They encouraged us to read
Mr.
books.
Secretary, I understand this is good for your politics back home.
It's got nothing to do with
but
my
I'm not-
politics. My
no,
bill
of
is
course it
passed.
does.
My bill is
It has
passed.
everything to do with your
I'm
politics.
here to-
But you came here with a problem, and I'm trying to understand the solution, and you don't have one.
We solved the solution. We solved the solution.
Other than to tell us that we don't agree with you, you're on the wrong, we'll be on the wrong side of history.
We solved the problem in Illinois. We fixed it because we.
Well, there are others you could work on.
Well, that's why
I'm
I'm
out
here to
of
help.
time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
See, so you can see there that Senator Kennedy was very upset, you know, but I'm not going to say that he doesn't make a good point. He does make a good point, you know. And he can tell where, you know, somebody's playing politics and they're not. The Secretary of State of Illinois, Alexi, he goes, listen, I'm not trying to play politics. Like, my bill's already passed. Like, I'm good. But you can tell that Senator Kennedy is a little bit frustrated by it. And I get it. You know, he has, rightfully so, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, whatever have you, is in his family, nieces, nephews. And he probably is thinking about them when he is reading that type of scene from a book. And also thinking like, my little granddaughter could be reading this, or my little grandson, or my nephew, or my niece. So I can understand the worry there. You know, I get that the book is about sexual abuse and it's not erotic, but it sure sounds like it is. It sure sounds like it is. So we're gonna jump over, guys, to Stephen A. Smith. Final clip. Going to go about 8 minutes in. This was when he had Hakeem Jeffries on. I encourage you guys to go back and watch it because I'm telling you, it's going to trip you out. Especially if you are in the minority community, listen, because we know that minorities, we don't always pay attention to politics the way that we should. Not everybody. You got some of us out here who've been paying attention to it. I talked in my live yesterday that for the first good portion of my life, I paid more attention to the Democratic Party than I did any other party. And then when I went into the Marine Corps, I started to put my eye on the Republican Party. And I just started to pay more attention to politics in general. I'll tell you, as military people, we get paid differently. When a Democrat's in office, when a Republican is in office, the pay look a little different, right? So, and military personnel will attest to that. So, with that being said, I sit down with minority leader of the U.S. House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries. Now, Hakeem Jeffries, right? Minority leader. There goes that long pause again. You know, Hakeem Jeffries, I can't say that I have anything bad to actually say about him. I just think that sometimes his answers sound very scripted. And I don't understand at this point, Jordan Peterson talked about this. I don't understand why at this point Democrats aren't realizing that if they don't produce somebody genuine, if they don't produce someone real, if they don't produce someone who resonates, that they are not coming back into office for some time. Like, I don't think that they understand this. And unfortunately, this interview, it kind of kept me on the same path with Hakeem Jeffries because I thought Stephen A. Smith brought his A game, like always, answered great questions, was pressing. Stephen A. scared. You know, we know this about Stephen A. Smith. He's going to ask you questions. And he's going to ask the questions that he asked when he's with his white friends and when he's with his black friends. So if he's talking to Bill O'Reilly and he want to know why the Democrats aren't doing something, when he gets in front of a Democrat, he's going to ask the Democrats, why aren't y'all doing something? And that's exactly what he did. And, man, I just thought Hakeem Jeffries, his answers just weren't genuine. They weren't genuine, and that's why y'all got that long pause from me. Because honestly, if you go through all the comments, it says the same thing. Like, why is the first comment says, this guy remembered all his talking points. This is the crap people hate. I'm like, yo, the Democrats' level of tone deaf is crazy right now. Like, it's really crazy. I don't know what's happening, but the only thing I can attribute it to is what Jasmine Crockett said in this whiplash since the election, because I don't think that they're paying very close attention. So let's jump into this Stephen A. Smith and Hakeem Jeffries interview. We're going to watch a little bit of it, And then after that, you guys go on over to Stephen A. Smith's channel and watch the whole thing. It looks like it's about 39 minutes, at least this part. I thought it was longer than that, like an hour or more. But go over to Stephen's channel and you'll be able to find it.
Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show. My guest represents the 8th Congressional District of the great state of New York and is serving his 7th term in the United States Congress. I'm honored he's taken time out of his very busy schedule to come on this show. Please welcome Democratic House Minority Leader, the one and only Hakeem Jeffries. Good afternoon, sir. How are you? How's everything?
Good afternoon. Great to be with you.
Listen, first of all, I'm in a bad mood. I'll tell you why. We'll get to it later. My Knicks, I had to watch them this week, and I'm very upset about that. The Yankees, they're having press conferences over facial hair. I'm very upset about that. There's a lot about New York sports that's getting on my nerves right now. We'll get to all of that stuff later because I know that's something that you want to talk about as well, and I'm looking forward to talking about it. But the first question for me, obviously, with so much going on in the nation's capital right now, how do you feel about where things are specifically overall, and just as important with the Democratic Party at this moment in time?
Well, this is a tough moment for the country. What we've seen over the last several weeks is a flood of extremism unleashed on the country coming out of the White House and from the Trump administration. In many ways, the parade of horribles is really designed to try to disorient and discourage and depress people. And we're going to have to show a level of resilience to get the country through this very tough moment. That's exactly what we as House Democrats, partnering with Senate Democrats, partnering with governors and attorney generals all across the country need to do. The American people want us to solve problems on their behalf, particularly the core challenge of unaffordability in the United States of America. The cost of living is too high. The American people clearly in November indicated that they want us to do something about it. We're prepared as House Democrats to address that issue, to lower housing costs, lower child care costs, lower grocery costs, lower insurance costs, and lower utility costs. Unfortunately, President Trump has been more of a chaos agent over the last few weeks and has not shown any interest whatsoever in dealing with the unaffordability that many everyday Americans are confronting all across the country.
When you call him a chaos agent,
You see what I'm saying? Chaos agent, not interested in dealing with anything the American. And this is where I'm like, where is he getting this from? Like, you see all the Doge findings, Hakeem Jeffries. This is what Trump is doing. Like, it's going to take some time. We just got President Joe Biden out. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to undo. So when he literally says that he's not showing any interest in what the American people have asked for, it's like, okay, I mean, I don't think like a Democrat thinks like this, but I maybe they thought that he was going to go in there on day one and sign an executive order telling all the supermarkets to drop the prices. It doesn't work like that. But I'm not sure exactly what the Democrats wanted from him in about 35 days in, almost a little less than 40 days in. Like, what exactly are they asking for? Because I don't think a Democratic president would have done anything different. So I don't think that they would have moved any faster than Trump. I don't think that they would have dropped anything any faster than what we're seeing. I don't think so. This stuff takes time. So just listening to him, I'm just like, oh man.
That many everyday Americans are confronting all across the country.
When you call him a chaos agent, be specific about what you think he is doing that's creating chaos. I want to know from one of the leading voices in the Democratic Party, when you utter the word chaos, be specific about exactly what you believe he's doing to cause chaos.
And Stephen A. Smith is asking like that for a reason, because when I reacted to commentated on it, him and Bill O'Reilly talking, he said that, like Bill O'Reilly said, there's not anyone in the Democratic Party, not a mayor, not a governor, not anyone in the Senate, not a congressperson. There's not one person that's willing to say that Joe Biden destroyed the Democratic Party. Now, that might be a little harsh, right? So that might be why someone, a part of the party, wouldn't say it like that. Joe Biden was in politics for a long time. He got some reach. So there's probably a reason why a lot of these Democrats won't say it. But Bill O'Reilly was very right. And Stephen agreed with him. He said, listen, when you're right, I got to concede, and I concede. And it's true, right? Like, there's not a lot of people, if any, I have not seen any Democratic leaders really step up and say anything that I think is worth it. Like, hey, like, you know, this rhetoric we've been driving, like, you know what, we were just caught up in just everything being fair for people. Like, the American people would even understand that. But Jordan Peterson made a great point when he said the Democrats are not willing to abandon this predisposed thinking that they had to even come on long form podcasts, really, right? Like, and then when they do, it depends on which one they're willing to come on. Like, they're surely not coming on anyone where someone's conservative. I think if the Democrats wanted to really like make a mark, or really even like I don't know, wave a flag. Let's just call it a metaphor, a flag, so somebody actually sees them. Go on Joe Rogan's podcast. Like, that's easy. Like, this guy has one of the biggest, most popular podcasts in the world. Do you honestly think that President Trump and VP Vance going on there like didn't help their campaign at all? You're absolutely crazy, and you do not understand podcasting if you think that. Right? So it's just like, dude, like, tell one of the Democrats, like a prominent one with a voice who's not scary, hey, go on Joe Rogan to talk about the Democratic Party. If Stephen A. Smith ain't gonna do it, I think the amazing Lucas should do it. All right? Shout out to you, Lucas. I love your content. Like, and I think Lucas, I've said it before, I think Lucas does a great job as far as like reporting and commentating on like the liberal side of things the way that he does. And he even talked about the fact that he was on the more conservative side of things, but he changed, you know? Like I said, having fought for the country, and then understanding politics, being in the military, and then also being, you know, of mixed race in this country, I can see it from a lot of different facets. So I can see somebody going from Democrat to Republican. I can see somebody going from Republican to Democrat. And I'm not saying that the Democratic Party we just had is the greatest, but like traditionally or historically, what the party has stood for.
Well, we've seen more than 40 or so different executive orders that have been issued as it relates to things that are clearly either unlawful or unconstitutional, designed to be disruptive. You have hardworking federal employees who are being targeted in ways that is creating a lot of trauma for them, their children, and for their families. We've seen statements made by President Trump related to President Zelensky, who's not a dictator. He's actually a champion for democracy, for freedom, and for truth. And instead, you see the Trump administration playing footsie with Vladimir Putin and Russia. They're sworn enemies of the United States of America. That is actually not helpful to our national security. It's chaotic. And what we've seen in connection with all of these unlawful and unconstitutional executive orders is lawsuit after lawsuit filed, actually more than 75 at this particular point in time, against these unlawful and unconstitutional executive orders. And the courts are siding with America and the Constitution over and over and over again, not the Trump administration. So instead of advancing legislation designed to actually solve problems, I think it's fair to say what we've seen is chaos being unleashed on the American people.
What about those out there who would say the Democrats have contributed to the chaos? Because you had President Joe Biden in office over the previous 4 years with Kamala Harris, the Democrat.
Now, I don't have a problem with the way Hakeem Jeffries just answered that question, but does that not seem deflective? Like, does it not seem like he basically avoided the question that Steven asked altogether? It's like constantly putting everything back on the other side and constantly giving reasons why the Democratic Party is better and why the Republican Party is not. And going back to the things that President Trump said he would do, but we haven't seen just yet. I think it was a little bit deflective. I don't think it was the most genuine. And honestly, like I didn't necessarily want to say that because I don't want to seem too critical of him, right, as a minority House leader. But literally, when I went in the comments, just reading the same thing, like, dude, if you're looking at these last two generations, I'm not talking about Gen Alpha because they're too young to vote, but if you're paying attention to millennials and Gen Z, it's like they're going to look for authenticity. Like, they're going to look for someone who's genuine. They're going to look for someone who dare I say, vulnerable, because you did see some of that out of J.D. Vance talking about his family, right, and his grandmother, and the way he suffered, and how he loved his sister, and like his trials with his mom. So I like, for the life of me, I do not understand how the Democratic Party became this tone deaf, but it is very worrisome for me.
Democratic nominee as his VP. Obviously, there are things that were going on over the last 4 years when we talk about inflation, when we talk about the borders and how open borders obviously was something that was problematic for this nation. So many of those things contributed to the demise, or dare I say, the chaos that you're alluding to now. People would look in the face of the Democratic Party and say, what about you guys? You guys had everything to do with this. How do you answer that?
Well, certainly I think Joe Biden and his administration was anything but chaotic. They dealt with a lot of different challenges that he had to confront upon taking office. In fact, if you look back on it, in January of 2021, President Biden inherited both a public health crisis around COVID-19, an economic crisis connected to the shutdown of the economy, a democracy crisis related to the violent attack on the Capitol that had occurred on January 6th, and then shortly thereafter, an international crisis related to Russia's unprecedented, brutal attack on the people of Ukraine. So
he's going to say that Joe Biden was juggling all of these crises, right? Instead of saying, yeah, Stephen A., you know what? Like, surely, like, to a certain degree, I'll take that one on the chin. Like, the Democrats, we probably did cause some of the chaos. I mean, by the time the presidential election came, people felt like we had been lying about our president, and we thought he was even better than what he... Like, the man can't even be honest. This is what drives me crazy. Like, he can't even just answer the question, Hakeem. Just say, yes, we did add to some of the chaos. However, like, then you can go into it. But it's like all of this deflecting, and it's the whole entire time.
Trying to manage a lot, doing the best job that he could over that particular period of time. Now, there's certainly, it is certainly the case that there are issues that the American people are asking us to decisively tackle, that we need to figure out a way to do common ground where possible around driving down the high cost of living. And as you mentioned, Stephen A., as it relates to the border, look, we have to secure the border. Period, full stop. We have a broken immigration system,
So why didn't you
and it
do
needs to be fixed. And we should do it in a bipartisan and a comprehensive way. So there's some permanence to the resolution. But at the same period of time, we have to protect dreamers, protect farm workers, and protect families, people who are contributing to the American way of life in community after community after community. And lastly, I'd say that we can all agree that we have to keep our communities safe. And certainly some of the actions that we've seen, you referenced, my concern with the chaos. It's chaotic to pardon more than 1,500 violent criminals, many of whom attacked police officers on January 6th and brutally beat them, and then unleashed those folks into the community to go back home and at least threaten some with harm. That's problematic. That doesn't make America safer. It actually undermines public safety.
So many Republicans, and I'm sure you've seen me on a political circuit talking a little bit. Let me state right here with you on the record, I am no politician. I have no desire to be a politician. I'm not on the level of Hakeem Jeffries. I'm not on the level of Josh Shapiro, who I've interviewed. I'm not on the level of a Westmore. It'll be a snowball's chance in hell that I ever get to that point, for crying out loud. I've actually called it pathetic that I'm a candidate in people's eyes for the presidency because I'm not qualified. But I feel the frustration of the American people when they're talking about the state of affairs that exist in this country and the role both parties have played in it. So I would ask you right now, speaking specifically about the Democratic Party, how do you feel about where the Democratic Party is right now in the eyes of the American people, particularly when the latest polls, I think it's Quinnipiac polls, show that congressional favor in terms of representatives in Congress from the Democratic Party?
Bro, 18, not even at 30%, 18 to like 20, 24 or something like that percent.
It's like at 20%, if I remember correctly. The Republicans are at 40% for crying out loud. You guys are at 20%. How concerned are you about the Democratic Party? How are you feeling about where the Democratic Party is right now in the eyes of the American people?
Well, first of all, when it comes to the presidential aspirations that are being ascribed to you, certainly you're doing all right in the polls, and that's a testament to how you keep it real and connect with the American people. That said, in terms of where congressional Democrats are at, listen, polls are all over the place. You're correct in what you just mentioned as it relates to one particular poll. It was a Washington Post poll that just came out earlier today, and it asked the American people, who would you prefer is in charge in the next Congress? House Democrats to serve as a check and balance on Donald Trump, or House Republicans who, are going to continue to just go along to get along.
And this is where for Hakeem Jeffries, I get skeptical, right? Because it's like a poll came out and said that, right? Okay, so did the poll specifically say that do you want Democrats to be in the House to be a check and balance for Trump? Because if the poll said that poll was created by the same people who was like running the FBI before the last lady got fired. Or that poll was created by like the same people that was telling the American people that Joe Biden was fine when he actually wasn't. So I have a hard time thinking that if a poll comes out and asks me what I want to see, what party do you want to see in office? Would you like to see the Democrats in the House just so they can serve as a check and balance for Trump? I wouldn't even answer that survey, nor would I think it's real. So I'm like, that's questionable for me, Did the survey say that, or are you just adding that because you feel like President Trump and his administration need a check and balance? See, it's that type of stuff that I'm like, I don't know, Hakeem Jeffries, I don't know.
And by 13 points, the American people said House Democrats, I think it was 54 to 41. Mm-hmm. We clearly have work to do, but I also think that
But to his defense, right? Because I'm not going to just say it like he's just spewing trash. He said that by 13%, the public said that they would rather have the Democrats there. I would be able to understand that to a degree, right? Maybe if there wasn't so much corruption going on right now, what happened in the last administration, everything Doge is finding, then I would say, sure, I could see people saying that they would rather have more Democrats possibly in the House or in Congress to serve as a check and balance for Trump. Sure, I can see that with 13%, leading by 13%. But right now, nonetheless, President Trump is still doing exceptionally better than what he did his last term. So either way, he's a favorable president right now, right? His approval rating is not low. I remember President Trump's first term, and probably, I don't know if it was like his first 100 days in or something like that, but they were showing his approval rating. And I remember it being somewhere between 34 and maybe like 37%, 34 and 40%. So his approval rating wasn't super high his first term. Whereas now we're seeing numbers like 60%, 58%, right? Some Democrats have challenged that, but even when I go back and try to verify some of the stuff that they're saying they're seeing, you can't find it. So I think it's just interesting when he's talking about that poll. But like I said, to his defense, because historically we have seen this. Like, we have not historically seen the Democrats really completely out of government, right? And this is why I'm saying that they're tone deaf, because no one can understand that, like, if the American people put you completely out of government, they're clearly displeased with more than just a lot, right? More than just a lot. We didn't just watch President Trump take the presidency. We watched the Republicans take everything. So we could clearly say that the American people, and know the election was not rigged. And yes, people made sure they were more careful this time, and a lot more eyes were on it, because President Trump has not stopped since the last time saying, like, the election was rigged, the election is rigged. He's true to what he believes.
the American people are increasingly starting to recognize that in this country that we have, you need common sense public servants who are willing to try to solve problems to make life better for hard-working American families. And that's our commitment. And we're going to have to do a better job of convincing the American people that is what drives us to make life better for every American in every single community in every corner of the country.
Well, what's the impediment to the Democratic Party doing a better job? Let's speak specifically about that, because you're the House.
You see, Stephen A. Smith, like, he keeps saying the word specifically. Like, talks to me specifically about the Democrats. Tell me what you specifically mean by chaos. Like, and he's saying that because he doesn't. Dude, it's like what the comments say. Like, this guy remembered all his talking points. This guy in the comments, meaning like Hakeem Jeffries. People felt like all Hakeem Jeffries did was come on here with a bunch of talking points that he had memorized. So I believe that the reason why Stephen A. Smith is saying specifically so much is because Hakeem Jeffries is kind of talking broadly. Like, he's not really let's call it name it and claim it, right? Like, he's not calling out nobody's name. He's not saying what he personally believes. He's not saying what he personally feels like. And this is why it seems so disingenuous. This is why the people feel like the Democratic Party is very out of touch with the American people right now, which I would agree.
Minority leader. You're one of the top 2 Democrats in the country. And I'm looking at the party and I'm seeing these protests for DEI and other things. And I got to tell you something right now. I didn't have an issue with the protest. I had an issue with the behavior that I saw during the protest. People screaming expletives at the president, at Republican officials, etc. I'm saying they sound like they're on a campaign, sir. They're sounding like the same way they sounded during the campaign, and clearly the election showed that's not going to work. Why are they continuously doing it? It's not only getting in the way of the party itself, I think it's getting in the way of somebody like you doing the best job that you could possibly do, having to deal with this nonsense. How do you feel about that, and what do you say about it?
Well, I think if we can take a step back as it relates to what the fundamental challenge is in America for people all across the country, people, whether you're on the left, in the center, or on the right, all points in between.
Okay.
The system is broken. For far too long, right, we've seen everyday Americans unable
get on with it.
to get ahead, and many can barely get by. This was exacerbated, of course, by inflation and the high cost of living, but that's not a phenomenon just from the last year or two. That's been the case for decades. We've seen our jobs go in the wrong direction. We've seen the ability for people to provide a comfortable living for themselves and for their families be eroded. What we've seen, of course, are Americans who no longer believe, in many instances, that their children or grandchildren will be able to do better than them. When you and I were coming up, that was basically a core principle of the American dream. We had to struggle, had to work hard, but there was that sense that opportunity would be available for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's gone in many instances. And so as a result, you see frustration, you see concern, you see anger from people all across the land. That's one of the reasons why, Stephen A., I think that the political pendulum continues to swing. You go from George H.W. Bush to Bill Clinton to George W. Bush, George W. Bush to Barack Obama to Trump to Biden back to Trump. And the likelihood is it may swing again in 2028. Why? Because there's an underlying frustration with Washington's core inability to make life better for everyday Americans, to bring the American dream to life.
Representative Jeffrey,
be eroded.
I think it's getting in the way of somebody like you doing the best job in minority leader. You're one of the top 2 Democrats in the country. And I'm looking at the party and I'm seeing these protests for DEI and other things. And I got to tell you something right now. I didn't have an issue with the protest. I had an issue with the behavior that I saw during the protest.
And I did too, because the Democrats literally, I didn't like the behavior I saw either. Like, it was a little bit much for me. And today somebody asked the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, they said, are the Republicans willing to go in the streets and fight with the Democrats, take the fight to the Democrats in the streets, meaning protesting in the streets? And she said, absolutely not. And you know what? That was a great answer, because by her answering like that, look at what it's making the Democratic Party look like. It looks like there's 2 brothers and the Democratic Party is the little brother throwing a temper tantrum. That's exactly what this is making them look like.
Screaming expletives at the president, at Republican officials, etc. I'm saying they sound like they're on a campaign, sir. They're sounding like the same way they sounded during the campaign, and clearly the election showed that's not going to work. Why are they continuously doing it? It's not only getting in the way of the party itself, I think it's getting in the way of somebody like you doing the best job that you could possibly do, having to deal with this nonsense. How do you feel about that, and what do you say about it?
So I rewinded it. We're done reacting to that part, but I rewinded it because I just wanted to show you guys, based on the answer that Hakeem Jeffries gave, he didn't answer the question. He literally didn't answer the question. And this is what I'm saying with him. Like, it bothers me a little bit that he does that, because for me, I'm thinking to myself, Stephen A. Smith is giving you compliments. He's saying that you are one of the top Democrats in the country, right? You're one of the top in the country. Why is it that we can't get a straight answer from you? And like, that's what I feel like when Stephen's talking to him. He's saying, I feel like the crap that the Democratic Party is pulling right now, the yelling in the streets, the pointing the finger. I use the two brother analogy, and the Democrats are the little brother throwing a temper tantrum. Stephen A. Smith clearly recognizes that, and he goes, listen, I didn't have a problem with the Democratic protests. I had a problem with the behavior. Like, why are they doing this crap? And he's like, I also feel like that by them acting like this is preventing somebody like you, Hakeem Jeffries, from doing your job. Hakeem Jeffries is shaking his head and agreeing with him. And then when he answers him, he doesn't even answer the question. Like, he literally says, let's go to the foundational reason why Americans are unhappy. You can tell that Stephen A. Smith is frustrated with him. And Steve, you should be. I'm frustrated for you. I think you handled yourself well, Steve, in that interview, because I don't see, the Lord knows how to like navigate people, right? And I don't think I would have been that poised with him. I think I would have got to a point where I would have been like, Hakeem, you're going to answer one of these questions transparently, or I'm going to turn this podcast off. Like, I feel like I would have got to that point. And then when I scroll and look at the comments, it's the same thing. This party will remain in the wilderness for years with leadership like this. Leadership like what? They're talking about Hakeem Jeffries. Discount Obama. Okay. They're talking about Hakeem Jeffries. It's like he's reading a teleprompter. The Democrats need a lot of help. Okay, so this is not just like one or two people you see and react on YouTube that's kind of conservative saying this about the Democrats. They legitimately right now have no voice. They legitimately right now have not one person that I feel like if they put up in the 2028 election, that person is going to win. Who is it going to be? It's not going to be Gavin Newsom. I don't think it's going to be Josh Shapiro. It's not going to be AOC. It's not going to be Kamala Harris, even though she is in the lead right now, but it's too early to tell and she won't win, right? It's not good. I don't think it's going to be Pete Buttigieg. And then now Steve Smith is on there. So I'm just like, yo, the Democrats are killing me right now. Like, it's a sight to see. It's a painful thing to watch right now. If you even like any part of the Democratic Party at any point in history, I feel like this is the hardest part to watch. This part of history right here. The last 4 years and just like the behavior right now. Alright guys, so we're on the last clip of the live, and you know what we say here. We end with a clip from Cliff, our trusted friend, Cliff Buell. He does Christian content. I love Cliff's content. His shorts are amazing. He did long-standing content as well. You can go on his channel and you can find some podcasts that he's done long-standing and some clips that he's done, some YouTube shorts that have went completely viral because they are great. Today, we are talking about giving money gets Jesus to come back. Okay, that's not a true statement. So if Cliff is talking about this, he's probably talking about pastors manipulating people. And I can see right here, it says, pastor clearly manipulating Christians. I think this was an important clip for me to pull. Like, normally, you know, I spend time with it for you guys because I care about the clip that I'm going to use at the end of the live stream. Because whoever's going to jump on here after I'm done streaming or days later and they watch the whole live stream, they're eventually going to get to this point where I pull up a Christian clip and I share it with you guys because that is something the Lord led me to do some time ago on this channel, especially when I started reacting more to news and political things, right? So it was a slight conviction I got that I followed. And we're going to end this live like this every single time, right? So with that being said, I'm hoping that you guys will either share this, but if not, that people will watch to the end of the live so they can get to this point, because this is not something I ever put in the beginning of the live or in the middle of the live. We end the lives with a clip from Cliff. So this is how we end it. Are you headed to heaven or hell? So that's going to be more projected towards the manipulating pastor. But let's see what Cliff covers about this pastor who's manipulating people for money. I guess in a sense saying that giving money gets Jesus to come back.
Disgusting manipulation of God's people. Evangelical pastor says Jesus hasn't returned due to the lack of donations.
Oh my gosh. Oh God. Okay. All right. I'm sorry, guys. I'm gonna go back. Like, remember I said I don't always watch these ahead of time. Like, sometimes I watch them with you, so it's like my first time. But it's like, dude, I hate when people manipulate the word of God. Like, that gets under my skin in such a way that I don't have time on this live to explain it. But for somebody to say that an evangelical pastor said that the reason why Jesus hasn't come back yet is because of the lack of donations, I'm like, you have got to be kidding me right now.
This is a disgusting manipulation of God's people. Evangelical pastor says Jesus hasn't returned due to the lack of donations. He says, I honestly believe this. The reason why Jesus hasn't returned...
Was that Jesse Duplantis? Is that his name? Was that him? Oh my goodness, I think it was. Hold on, chat. Yep, it was. Oh my goodness. I'm not shocked. The televangelist. Okay.
Says Jesus hasn't returned due to the lack of donations. He says, I honestly believe this. The reason why Jesus hasn't come is because people are not giving the way God told them to give. When you understand this, you can speed up the time.
Oh my God.
He continued to suggest that if people called the number at the bottom of the screen, God the Father would say, Jesus, we'll get him. I'm all for giving, for generosity, for sowing seeds. I truly believe that Christians should be the most generous of all, but manipulating believers into giving by saying something as insane as this is disgusting.
Bro, that was going to be my exact word. I'm like, yo, this is disgusting right now. I have to play this one more time because this is too much for me. Jesse Duplantis. I'm so not shocked, but I'm like, bro, why? Why did this have to go viral?
This is a disgusting manipulation of God's people. Evangelical pastor says Jesus hasn't returned due to the lack of donations. He says, I honestly believe this. The reason why Jesus hasn't come is because people are not giving the way God told them to give. When you understand this, you can speed up the time. He continued to suggest that if people called the number at the bottom of the screen, God the Father would say, Jesus, we'll get him. I'm all for giving, for generosity, for sowing seeds. I truly believe that Christians should be the most generous of all, but manipulating believers into giving by saying something as insane as this is disgusting. This is
I agree with you, Cliff. It's disgusting. Yeah, like, give me a minute, guys. I'm gonna find a Bible verse for you guys real quick. So let's talk about that a little bit. Why I find the verse. First of all, lack of donations is not the reason why Jesus has not returned yet. That's actually not true. There is a reason why, but it's not due to lack of donations. Oh, they're going to bring me to this one. Hold on, guys. I'm looking for a Bible verse real quick. I'll just read about it here. I'll go to my Bible app. Let's open my Bible plan where I'm at. So, as I'm looking for this, I'm just being stubborn because I don't want it to like go out of like my Bible plan. Because I go into it every single morning, but that's fine. I'll let it do it. That's fine. We're gonna go over the Psalms. The book of Psalms. Let's do chapter 24. I like that one. So, and this is to one specific part, but not to the part I was just talking about. So, if Jesus is not coming back due to lack of donations, why isn't Jesus coming back yet? Well, Jesus is not coming back yet because Scripture says that he will not return until everyone has heard the gospel. And until all of the Gentiles who are supposed to be saved come into that. So there are reasons why Jesus is not returning yet, but it's not because of a reason like that. So I'm reading out of the NLT version. So Psalm chapter 24, right? I'm going to read just verses 1 and 2. And really in context, this is about the sovereignty of God. But David's talking to the Lord in prayer. This is what he says. He says, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. The world and all its people belong to him. For he laid the earth's foundation on the seas and built it on the ocean depths. So, Jesus is not coming back due to lack of donations? I don't think so, because everything on the earth and in the earth belongs to God, including all the money. So, I'm not really sure. Like, I'm not gonna say I'm not sure. This is Jesse Duplantis. I know where he gets this stuff from. It's just not true, right? It's a false narrative. It's a false gospel. It's hearsay, right? It's not true. And I'm sorry if you guys have been, around a pastor or a church and this has happened to you. As a young child, I grew up, and TV evangelist was like a big thing when I was probably 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, during those. So that would put, those years would be, 96, 98, 99. Like, so around those years, TV evangelists they were popping, they were big. It's not like they don't still exist. They do, but I think because we have so much more exposure to everything, like just like the internet's a lot bigger now. Like YouTube people use YouTube like they use TV now. A lot of people don't watch mainstream TV. When I would see the TV evangelists all the time, they would be on TV, and mainly they would be on late at night. Like my grandmother would fall asleep with the television on, and eventually it would be like, I don't know, 11, 1 o'clock, 11 at night, 1 in the morning, and I have to go to the bathroom, and I would just hear this stuff on TV. And like I would go to wherever she was, and like sometimes she would fall asleep in the living room or in her room, and I would go to wherever she was because I would hear the TV and I would think she was awake. So I would go and I would go to her room and see that she's asleep, but sometimes I would stand there and I would watch the TV. And it would be televangelists on there. So it would be just, pastors who were on there. They were usually pretty big pastors, usually dressed pretty fancy, and they were usually selling something that was not godly and or biblical, right? Now, I'm not saying that every pastor or every church that's on TV is like this. Please don't take that from this, because I'm not saying that. There are actually some pastors that are on large radio stations or TV stations, and they are legitimate, meaning like they are not manipulating. They are not trying to fleece the flock, for lack of better terms, right? They're just on there as honest men of God, and they are just talking about scripture and how to help you find Jesus Christ and become saved. But the TV evangelists that I would see as a child, they were very different. Anytime I would sneak into my grandmother's bedroom at night after hearing the TV, they were always talking about something to the effect of, they'd have like a bottle of water that was like, I don't freaking know, but it was probably like this or a little bit smaller. Like they would have something like that, and it would be filled up with water, and it would be something to the effect of like, this water came from the Jordan River. And if you call in right now and purchase this water, you will experience 30 days of abundant blessing because this water came from the same place where Jesus got baptized at. It was things like that TV evangelists did. And for years, I wish I don't have the time. This is not the live for it. But one day I'm going to create a live where I strictly talk to you guys about things like this. But for years, that had my perception of God jacked up. Like for years, people don't understand that when TV evangelists are on there like Jesse Duplantis, and he's saying something like Jesus hasn't returned because of lack of donations. That's asinine. That's actually not the reason why Jesus hasn't returned. And for someone, I know he's read the Bible. Now, if he believes it or not, I'm not the judge of that. But he should already know, because Scripture specifically says why Jesus isn't coming back, and it's not due to money. So it's it gets a little under my skin. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. You know, it gets a little under my skin when people manipulate and they twist the word like that, especially going into the pockets of people who really don't have it, but they're just in search of hope. Like that truly bothers me. And it honestly, it saddens me, because it's not something that Jesus would ever do to anybody. So with that being said, guys, we're at the end of the live. It's been fun, guys. It's always fun chilling with you on the corner. Thursday, tomorrow's Friday. Okay, tomorrow I'm gonna do my best to not be so tired, guys. I wake up early for work. I gotta go to bed early, so it's like, and I use my mind a lot at work. I used to use my hands a long time ago, but I use my mind a lot at work. So, but nonetheless, it's a Friday. It's a Friday live, so I'm going to be hyped about it. I'm going to do my best to bring you guys some really good news. A great clip from Cliff. And until next time, guys, which is tomorrow around 3:30. I'll try to get on a little bit earlier than that because it is Friday. But 3:30ish, I'll be on. We'll be going live, and we'll be covering some news again in this crazy world. So until tomorrow, guys, what do I always say? Take care of yourselves, guys. Take care of your mental. Take care of your mental. Take care of your heart. For all flows from it, right? Love yourselves, right? Why do I always end like that? Because everybody doesn't love themselves. They don't. And I had somebody ask me that, and they were saying, is that the reason why you do that? Yes, because I'm actually aware of the fact that everyone does not love themselves. So this is why I tell you to love yourselves. I tell you to love one another, because Jesus says to love your neighbor as yourself. There's a reason why I say the things I say. And I'm also very conscious of it, and I'm also a huge supporter of mental health. So I just understand certain things about people, and the last thing that you say to somebody is a lasting thing, right? Depending on how you use your words, right? So guys, with that being said, I love hanging out with you guys. I'm gonna see you tomorrow, right? It's like because it's a reoccurring thing, I always look forward to it. So tomorrow, guys, until then, take care of yourselves. What do I always say? Love yourselves, love one another. Take care of yourselves. Tomorrow, peace.